I don't know where my gavel is, but whatever. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to a meeting of the Code Enforcement Board, the LaGrange City Code Enforcement Board. It is Thursday, September the 10th, and it is promptly at 1 o'clock. We start on time. Good. So, first order of business is to take a census of the members present. I am here. Mr. Mike Berry is with us, as is Greg McCombs and Beach Craig Meyer, so all members are present for attendance and all this afternoon. Our next order of business, as you'll see, would be the approval of the minutes, which you should have before you. There are actually two sets to approve. That would be August the 13th and August the 18th. We could take a look at those and any comments or corrections. Have a motion to approve both sets of minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
And motion is seconded, and minutes are approved. Next order of business is going to be new business. And this afternoon, we have a new business concerning Prestwick Estates. That's number 200172, and it is regarding tall grass and weeds. We could have Code Enforcement Officer Stephanie Winther come forward. You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, I was first brought to the attention of Prestwick Estates in the summer of 2019. I had received a complaint from one of the neighbors. There is a common area in Prestwick Estates that wasn't getting mowed on a regular basis. He said he had reached out to the HOA to get them to mow it. It wasn't being mowed. He felt like he had no other choice but to call code enforcement. When I went over and looked in the 2019, there's no pictures in there from there. The grass was tall. It's a common area. It's a detention. It leads out into a detention basin for water for the subdivision, and it was over the 12 inches tall. At the time, the president of the HOA, his name was Scott Davidson, he and I would have conversations on the phone. I'd call him up, say, hey, you gotta mow this, here's the rules. We had several conversations. I don't have the dates of those conversations. I didn't keep track of that information. It was just a very casual conversation. It finally got to the point in June of 2019 that I had to issue a tall grass warning, which was a formal letter that I sent to them saying, hey, the ordinance states it can't be over 12 inches, you've got to get it cut. In August, they did get it cut. So then in August of 2019, again, I drove by, the grass was tall again, very informal again. I just sent him an email, said, hey, you've got to get this grass cut. We had talked about it again in September. I explained again, it cannot be over 12 inches. It has to be kept below 12 inches. Fast forward to this summer when they had a changing of the guards. Different HOA president became involved. When the summer hit and I again got a notice from the neighbor, a phone call saying, hey, the grass is above 12 inches, they're not coming out, they're cutting it. I called Scott Davidson, who then explained to me they had a new HOA president. He gave me his information. He relayed to me at that time that the new HOA president was very well aware of the fact that it needs to be kept below 12 inches. Again, I had phone calls. I didn't track the phone calls. I didn't write them down. It was just very informal. So May 18th, there's an email in there. I did send an email. Jeremy did send me an email stating that it was going to be mowed by late May. May 22nd, you'll see my email that I responded to him that I needed it cut no later than May 26th. Not even thinking about the fact that it was a holiday weekend. We had some conversations back and forth, Jeremy and I did via email. And he did get it cut. The grass was cut over that weekend, and it was down to where it should be. Through those emails with Jeremy, he no longer wanted that informal conversation. He wanted everything written down, mailed, formalized. So we fast forward to July. Okay, there's an email in there from the mayor. In the meantime, Mayor John Black had also met with them to explain to them that it needed to stay within 12 inches. I was not part of that conversation. I was not part of that, so I can't really speak for what they decided. We fast forward to July of this year. The grass had not been cut again since the time in May. I sent out a formal notice of violation to the Prestwick Estates Community Association, giving them until July 17th to get it cut. July 29th, I went out there. It still had not been cut, so they had like a 2-week grace period after the deadline. I issued a citation. I've got pictures here from May showing the tall grass. And I have pictures from June 6th when I did it, and it's really hard to see. I took pictures with the tape measure, and I didn't realize it at the time, but the tape measure was kind of blurry. But you can see at this point, this is a 4 feet line. So not only was it over 12 inches, but it was up to 4 feet at that point. When I issued the citation on the 29th, when I went out on the 27th, the grass still had not been cut, and now we're up over the 5-foot mark. Here's the 5-foot mark on the tape measure. I have included some pictures from today that I went and took. They did, after the 29th, they did get the grass mowed. At some point in August, it was mowed. It has not been mowed again since then. So today, when I went out there, they are mowing like the front part of the section, but they are not mowing the part up next to the neighbor, and they're not mowing the back part that the neighbor can see from his house. These are pictures I took this morning. This is what I can see from the street. When I drive by, this is where they've cut, and then they stop when they get to the hill. So everything on the back side of that hill has not been cut. This picture is the back side of the hill. And this morning when I measured it, it's measuring at about 30 inches. Trying to make sure my tape measure was clear that time. Now here is the neighbor's house, and this is the neighbor that has complained to me several times about the grass. Now his yard actually comes down to, I believe it is about here. He tends to cut all this because otherwise it starts growing into his yard and he ends up with weeds in his yard. So he mows part of this, but here's the part that the Homes Association is supposed to be mowing that hasn't been mowed. Now if you're standing in his yard, this is what you can see. This tall overgrowth. And then this is closer down into the detention basin. Again, this is when you're on the neighbor's property. This is what he can see from his backyard that's not being cut. And these pictures were taken today. So the citation was written for the tall grass, which was over 12 inches. And I don't have any witnesses or anybody else today. My pictures are my evidence for today.
Thank you, Stephanie. Are there any witnesses that you may have to bring forward at this time?
No, I have none.
All righty. I'd like to ask now if there are any respondents from the Homeowners Association. If there are, I'd like you to step forward and state your name and address. And I'll also ask you to take an oath when you get up here.
Good afternoon. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good afternoon. You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, sir?
I do.
Thank you. Just state
My name is Charles Williams. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead.
My name is Charles Williams. I live at 2029 Highland Court in Prestwick. I am on the board of directors with the Homeowners Association. And this is our new president, Angie McGee.
Angie,
Angie McGee.
and your last name, ma'am?
McGee, M-C-G-E-E.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I'm going to be doing most of the talking. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to give us a chance to address the concerns with Prestwick. Now, some of the stuff, Stephanie, that you've talked about, I did not know about. Prior conversations over a year ago, the personal conversation, did not know about. So much of what I'm going to talk about is what has been presented to me through members of the Homeowners Association and through my personal observations. I have some oh, I can use this, can't I? First of all, I need to discuss a little clarification on the location of the citation. The citation states that the issue of concern was at 130 Prestwick Drive. Well, we were confused because we went to 130 Prestwick Drive and the issue that she was talking about did not exist. So this is 130 Prestwick Drive.
All right, sir.
This is a frontal view of 130 Prestwick Drive. So we're talking apples and oranges here. I didn't know where to go. Now, based on prior experience, and now I know for sure, I was guessing at first about whether it was a complaint or whether it was an observation. I found out now it was a complaint. The complainant is a neighbor who we have had some issues with in the past. He's the newest member. He got the latest built house. There was an extension of sidewalk in front of his house. And one of our last projects last year was to complete sidewalks throughout the entire neighborhood so neighbors could do their walking, whatever the case may be. So that was an extension that we had to take care of as members of the Homeowners Association. But those portions in front of his property, he had to take care of. We had another person who was the vice president who had a portion of sidewalk he had to pay for. He understood, he paid for his part of the sidewalk. This guy just, I mean, he accused us of all sorts of things, including embezzling funds and being bought by people. I mean, he just never let up on us. Eventually, and I think you just need to know this just as a part of what I know, one day, the person who was the next door neighbor who had to pay for his part of the sidewalk, he's a sheriff. His name is Lee Merritt. And Lee was in his yard one day when this neighbor's wife came over and began to spill her entire personal story to him. She stated, and this is all hearsay, she stated that we're having financial problems, he's doing this, he's doing that, and he just goes off on these tangents. And we just happen to be in the line of the shrapnel. Therefore, any little nitpick thing that he could find, he would jump on. In reference to the tall grass, Stephanie, the area that we're going to talk about is the pumping station. I believe that's what you're talking about, because the area that was pointed out on the citation is not the pumping station. This is an overview of Prestwick. The largest area, well, the small area in the lower left is the area that was identified on the citation in writing. 130 Prestwick. It's between 128 and 132 Prestwick. We kept going by there. We didn't see this tall grass. So we said, we know where it possibly could be because of the concerns and the issues we've been having with the neighbor. We went there, and then I followed it up. I knew that that was the place. The pumping station was what you were specifically talking about. When our last president, I believe, may have been, he was new to the job, lots of pressure, and he may have been a little bit inflexible at times. I don't know that, but I'm assuming that, terrible thing to do. I'm assuming that because of the way things have turned out. So he's told us that on Memorial Day weekend, the level of tension, I guess, between you and him was such that he felt that he had to get the grass cut. And he went out and hired a contractor outside of our normal lawn service guy, who incidentally we're going to be getting rid of because he hasn't been following what we need to have done. But that's a sidebar. First we call our regular guy, and he says, hey, I'll get to it after the weekend. We have a holiday weekend. So our new guy says, I've been told that I got to get this thing done right now. He hires a guy, and $943 later, we've got the thing bush hogged and grass cut. I didn't know about all of this until it had happened. Fast forward to a visit with the mayor. So the mayor comes out. I hear that the mayor and Stephanie were going to meet at the location. I knew it was the pump house. So I went up there. I said, I need to sit in on this thing because our guy's new, and I want to make sure he doesn't, there are some things that he doesn't know about the history of the area. So the mayor made his observations, and he says there were no definitive resolutions. They did say they were doing these hand measurements. Well, let's keep the grass this high. Let's keep it. I said, no. We're not going to do that. Then he said, well, why don't we buy into guaranteeing that the grass will be cut every 2 weeks? I said, oh, no, we're not going to do that one either. The reason I would not agree to that, and gentlemen and ladies, I'm sure you would all agree, is if we do that, what if we don't get rain for a long period of time? What if there's no growth out there? And we're bound by contract to cut it, whether rain, shine, sleet, or snow. We're bound by contract during the season to cut it every 2 weeks. We can't. That's no way to cut a deal. So the mayor went away. He says he would talk to some people. I don't know what happened. None of this happened. The next thing I knew, we were getting the citation for 130, which is one of my main reasons for being here. If we're going to get a citation, then the citation must address and be specific to where we're going to go. That's number one. Now, the area that you're talking about at the pump station, we don't know the parameters for what the height of the grass is. Number one, the homeowners association have decided among themselves that we want the grass to grow. It's a wild area. Nobody uses it. The homeowner who bought that piece of property knew that his property backed up to this area. Oh no, am I talking too loud?
No, we got a timer.
He knew that his property, which is a wooded area, backed up to our green space, which we had decided we wanted to have grow anyway. We like the turkeys and the deer and all of the wild animals who are out there. Every time we cut it and bush hog it, it's just a barren place. And another thing, y'all, if you look at this property from Prestwick Drive, the property goes up at an angle, and at the top, at the height, there's a drop off into the basin, right? Right, Stephanie? There's a drop off into a basin. Deep in the basin, I went down there one day when the grass was taller than, was getting tall, and I took pictures. And in order, I'm guessing that we're going to keep the grass cut there because of the pumping station. But if nobody's using it, and if we as a community have decided that that is what we want to do, then by God, why can't we do it the way we want to do it? It's not hurting anybody. Why are we measuring grass? So that's the back of the station, pumping station. I'm standing in the basin. You can see the height of the grass. That's probably tall, but it's not bothering anybody. And oh, by the way, in 1996, 97, when the development was started, the builder and the city of LaGrange cut a deal that they would put that pumping station there. You know who's taking care of the maintenance and the area around it? We are. The trees that line the entrance of the driveway, we put them there. That in itself is an indication of our pride in our community. We keep the front covered, cut, but we can only do so much. I mean, when our lawn service provider comes out, he does the front entrance. We have a couple of other green spaces that he takes care of, and we have other green spaces that we just let grow. So where does the madness stop? At what point do we decide we're going to let grass grow there and not be sited, but not grow there? That pump station is bookended by the neighbor who complains about everything, and a piece of property to the right of us that's a tree lot that is for sale. Do we have the responsibility now to go in there and cut that grass too? This is an ambiguous citation. It doesn't help anybody. There are lots. I don't want to get off on a tangent, y'all. But I can drive down Highway 53 now between here and Prestwick Estates, and I can look off to the right and to the left and see a lot of properties where the grass is growing, but it's not for me to point my finger and tell on the other guy. That's not how I operate. I'm just saying that in the interest of neighborly stewardship, what is wrong with us doing what we want to do as a development? We are not going to let the grass grow till there are wild animals crawling out of there. By the way, animals want to interact with us just as much as we want to interact with them. Why do we want to cut the grass? The only reason we are where we are today is because we've taken their land away from the animals. They've got nowhere to go. So if that's a reason that we're keeping the grass cut, we just have to cut the cake where it is. So I just wanted to throw a couple of asks out there. First of all, I would like to ask for a copy of the photographs that were used to make these measurements. Though I think I never saw them, nor has any of the other members of the association seen them. And those are things that they're tapping me on my back about. Where are the pictures? How do we know that this happened? I understand we have pictures now. That's great. I'm glad to see that. So I don't have to make that explanation to the neighbors. So our asks are, again, with our new president, secretary, that you continue to keep the line of communication open. We will do everything that we can, but I consider it completely unfair to tell us adults that we can't let grass grow where nobody lives, where nobody plays, where the animals live, because a neighbor has a wild hair. It ain't right. It's just not right. The next thing, please inform any complainant and ask them if they have talked to the board. If this guy talked to Scott, God bless him, but I don't know. Scott told us everything. So I don't know if that's the case. If he has already ran Scott up and down the pole verbally about him being a crook, and Scott's an attorney, about him being a crook, and he's embezzling money from the homeowners association, I can't expect anything from this guy. Now, here's your next complaint you're going to get from this guy. You're not going to know why, but I'm going to tell you why. In 2021, we have to raise our homeowners association fees. And the reason for that is because it's been the same since 1997. $150 a year. This guy told Scott that he was the birth of Satan because Scott charged him, said you have to pay your homeowners dues. $150 a year? That's 44 cents a day. If he put 44 cents a day in his piggy bank, he could pay his homeowners association fee. So I'm not asking you to neglect this guy's concern. In his mind, that is his truth. That is his reality. Those are his values. But they do not align with the homeowners association. There are people in all families who don't speak the same language. We've got brothers and sisters who we say, God bless them, you know? And we have a couple in Prestwick Estates. We deal with it. That's life. The other thing I'd like to ask is because of the misunderstanding that our prior president had with you, Stephanie, it cost our meager budget $943. I would like to ask the board to consider refunding us that money. That wasn't right for us to go out there on a holiday weekend because he's afraid he's going to get a major fine on Tuesday morning after the holiday. The other thing that I'd like for you to consider is to rescind this fine based on the fact that we were going to the wrong place and addressing the wrong location. Be specific. That's the law. That's the law. So, we've never had any contentious relationships with any entity, city, state, or otherwise, and I see no reason as to why we should start now. There's no reason to do that. We are adults. I feel, this is just a personal feeling, and I've asked a couple of people about this, who said, we feel as though we're being treated like kids because, number one, we didn't have all the information, but number two, I'm not going to come into anybody's house in here and tell them that that chair belongs over there instead of here. To come to Prestwick Estate and tell us that you need to cut that grass, I don't care if you guys have agreed that the grass will grow there, but you're going to cut that grass. It's not the way to do business. You're not going to accept it. You're not going to accept anybody coming in your house telling you how to run it. So we can afford any bad feelings or whatever the case may be. I'm not feeling bad about it. I'm just frustrated. I'm just frustrated. And I just hope that you will consider what our asks are so we can get our budget back. We've got some stuff that we have to take care of real quick. And the money just ain't right. We need our money back. So, there you have it. Angie, would you like to say anything?
I'm new, so I'm learning from you. Now, as somebody that has a green space behind their house, granted it's not one that's taken care of by the lawn care guy, we maintain it. If the weeds get a little high, we just go out with a weed eater and knock them down. It's no big deal. I've lived in the subdivision for 4 years, and we are going to look for a new lawn care company because the guy does not get out there as quickly as he should. So we are in the process of going to get bids for another company, but in saying so, we're going to have to up our HOA dues to be able to afford to pay for a new lawn care business to come out and take care of us. I'm in real estate. There's a lot of subdivisions that pay way more than we pay to have their grounds maintained. But I can see, where, he may be upset about the tall grass, but don't complain about it. Just take the weed eater out there and knock it down and let one of us know. I'm new. I've only been doing it 3 weeks now. I've not got an email from him yet. Stephanie said she went out and it's a little tall. I've not heard from him yet about the grass being tall. But like I said, we're working on it diligently. We take pride in our neighborhood because we want people to drive through and say, hey, this is a nice neighborhood. If a house goes for sale in here, I want to move here. And everybody takes care of their homes the way they're supposed to. And we really do try to maintain our green space areas. And when you have one neighbor that is a constant complainer, then it does make it hard on the rest of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Did you guys didn't have any other witnesses or anybody who wanted to speak on your behalf? All right. Thank you very much, sir. Stephanie, time for your rebuttal.
I have not had any I want to make it clear, I've not had any conversations with either of them. All of my conversations took place with Scott Davidson, which was the HOA president last year, and then Jeremy Potts, who was the HOA president this year. You know, I can't discuss what the conversations were on the phone. I don't have any evidence of that. You've seen emails from my conversations with Jeremy. It was very clear what property I was talking about. Jeremy was very clear. I mean, that conversation, he knew exactly what we were discussing. The problem is, when you pull things up with PVA, trying to go with the legal parcel number and all that, is how we do it, and that's just what PVA has listed.
Right.
On the citation itself, it doesn't have that specific address. It says common areas, but again, I'd been in conversation with them for so long, in my mind, there was no misunderstanding on what property we were talking about. Going back to conversations that I've had with the neighbor who complained, that was one of the first things, in reference to what you said, one of the first things I had asked him was, hey, did you approach the HOA about this? Have you talked to them? And the response I got from him was he had been trying to work something out with them, and they just were not listening to his concerns. Again, I don't know. It wasn't a conversation I was part of. It was before I became involved. I'm just going off of his word. I don't have a problem with tall grass that you can't see or that doesn't bother anybody. The city ordinance is very clear that it's 12 inches and no taller. That's across the board for the city. Now, I know along 53, there's a lot of places that are actually county property, and they have different guidelines than what we do. But in the city, we try and make everybody follow the same rules across the board. If it's bothering a neighbor, or if you can see it from the street, then it's bothering the people that go by. And that's what I go by. When I drive by there, if I can see the tall grass, then I know it hasn't been cut. Or if the neighbor's calling me and complaining because he can see it from his property, then it's an issue. You know, if they want to keep the back cut that nobody can see and let that grow long, you know, then it's not disturbing anybody. But where it's buttoned up on somebody else's property line or where you can see it from the road, then it is a nuisance and it's a violation of the city ordinance. And that's what I'm following as a city ordinance.
Okay.
Is there any, do you have any documentation that could clear up the ownership of this property, like a plat or anything?
I
that
did
would
not bring the
show that?
no, I did not bring the PVA report or anything to show. There is that easement for the pumping station that he had talked about, that the city had worked out an arrangement with them for the easement. But that property still belongs to them, to
Well,
Prestwick
I mean,
Estates.
does the city acknowledge ownership of that property?
No, the city does not.
No, I mean, not city, but the subdivision.
The subdivision?
Yes. Sir, do you acknowledge that it's your all's property?
I cannot say factually. All I know is we've been taking care of it ever since we've been having.
According to PVA records, it's Prestwick Estates common area is what it is.
Yeah, I looked at that myself this morning, Beach, and for that property, it says Prestwick Homeowner Association for that wedge there,
Okay.
along with the other one that, the first smaller one
Yes.
on the right-hand side. I believe that was, Mr. Williams mentioned 130, I think, during his conversation, but the physical address there is 1930 is the physical address. There's a green space there, and I believe there's one more somewhere in the development that shows Prestwick Homeowner Association as having ownership.
Okay.
So I think I understand most all of those areas.
No, I had not had any conversations with them. I'm glad to meet you, the new president. My conversations had been with Scott again and with Jeremy, and the conversations with Jeremy did not go so well. He wanted things formal. He wanted it on paper. He didn't want phone calls saying, hey, cut your grass. And so that's how I did it with him. I tend to be a little bit nicer, and I do tend to just call people up and say, hey, what's going on? Why hasn't this been cut? Because I am flexible. I understand that when you have 3 weeks of solid rain, you can't get out and cut your grass. I agree with not setting up a contract saying, hey, every 2 weeks get it mowed, because there's circumstances you can't do that. And I know that if I can't get out and cut my grass, I can't expect anybody else to do it either. So you have to have a little flexibility, but Mr. Potts did not want flexibility. He wanted it black and white on paper, and that's what I did.
That's the neighbor as you're looking at the pumping station
was,
to the right?
Mr. Potts was the Homes Association president
Oh,
earlier this year.
oh, gotcha, okay.
I made 2 trips out there to look at the property, and I kind of agree that, you know, the front end was cut, and it looks nice, and I actually believe it, you know, based on car traffic through there, that portion should probably stay cut. I did look over the hill, and I agree that the wildlife area, I mean, the tall grass down on the upper end of that basin, kind of blended in with the rest of it, and it just looked like it was not unattractive to me to see it. Yes.
I'd just like to say one more thing in reference to a comment you just made, Stephanie.
Sure.
That the neighbor is I think I'll have to paraphrase you. He's bothered by the tall grass that's next to his property.
Correct.
My goodness, I have tall grass in my property. It doesn't belong to me. I just cut up to the edge, and I realized that when I moved in that was going to be tall grass there. I wasn't going to be taking care of it. That's no excuse for him to call out the law and say, I don't like the tall grass over there, make them take care of it. I mean, and again, it's all green space. We had agreed that that's what we wanted to do. And before he moved in there, he knew the rules. We have covenants, guidelines, and restrictions. He knew it. So I just find that hard to swallow.
Here's the problem as I see it. The scope of this board is actually pretty simple. Our scope is there are codes written, and has the code been violated, yes or no? It sounds like the conversation that might need to happen is not so much with this board, because to us, it's like, code says 12 inches, it's more than 12 inches. It seems pretty open and shut. As the president of an HOA that lives in your nightmare world, in my own little HOA, when you start getting people trying to get along is where it gets crazy. The thing I have learned as an HOA president is something called hierarchy of documents. So our HOA likes things a certain way, but we can't trump the city's ordinances. And so my house is right next to a property that like what we're talking about here. I cut it every week. And it's because I like the way it looks nice. It looks like my yard. Don't tell anybody, it's not my property. It looks like it, because I keep it mowed. If it was the opposite, if I liked it looking like a wildlife refuge, and a neighbor said, I don't like it looking like a wildlife refuge, and the HOA documents say, we can let it look like whatever we want, that's great until you get a complaint. And the complainant can say, I don't like the HOA rules, and the city rules trump the neighborhood rules, if I understand it right. And so that's the frustration you're at. For me, it would almost be like, how can we get these two neighbors to say, can we cut 10 feet of it? Let's make an agreement, because Stephanie does not ride around with her measuring stick looking for people to throw under the bus, has been my experience in the past couple of years. So, but as far as the scope of my understanding of why we're here, is there a code, is there a LaGrange code that says grass in the city limits of LaGrange has to be 12 inches or less? Yes, there is a code. Do we have a lot in the city of LaGrange that has grass more than 12 inches? Yes. Do we have a complainant? Yes, so it needs to be cut, is my understanding.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly on everything Mike says. There's evidently been what I'm hearing, some lack of communications, maybe in the HOA hierarchy and the way it was presented. and handled therein. Part of Mr. Williams' statements about such. As Mike said, the violation still exists. What can we do to resolve this violation and to bring it down to a level that the code enforcement officer and the board agrees with, and still, to a degree, you're not going to make everybody 100% happy. You're not going to please whoever that gentleman was, Jeremy. You're not going to please him 100%, or there may be others that you don't know about. But I think we need to work towards a certain amount of resolve with this. If there's grass visible, I believe Greg said that you could see the tops of some of that from the road right now. If we could cut those areas and get that down just a little bit, but, work out some sort of an agreement or an understanding. Angie mentioned something about that there was a lot of times where, if somebody called and complained, they get out there themselves with weed eaters and take care of that. Or maybe like Mike mentioned, going over there and hitting it a little bit. If we can keep that back area down, I read some verbiage in there about an as-needed cutting, or keeping it down to that back area where you don't see it from the street. Maybe that's a bit of a resolve for this. Now, Mr. Williams mentioned here some of the things he was asking for, and the $900 and some odd that was spent by the previous president, I understand, is that right? You felt like that the board or the city needed to refund that amount to the HOA. I'm sorry, my thinking on that is that probably would not happen. I don't know. What do you gentlemen think about, that aspect of it? And Beach, your thought on that?
No, that's not acceptable, but have you officially closed the testimony portion of this now?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Winther gave her rebuttal. Mr. Williams, did you have anything additional you'd like to add on top of what's been said already?
I have a closing statements.
Yes, sir, a closing statement. If you could come up here so we can hear a little better.
I would just like to, thank you, gentlemen and ladies. I would just like to say that I still am unclear about who makes the determination about whether grass should be 12 inches high in a particular area. There are so many areas throughout the city where the grass is more than 12 inches high. And this is a place that we take so much pride in keeping visible so that we have the good resale value in Prestwick Estates. I just am not getting, and I'm going with whatever the decision is. I'll do that. I'm fine with that. But I'm just having a hard time swallowing the fact that if we have decided, and the person who moves into a wooded lot that has to be cut, that has to be edged near where the tall grass was already growing, and suddenly it's a nuisance to him. I just can't get that. But in closing, thank you for the opportunity to let me voice the frustrations of the Homeowners Association. And I just threw it up against the wall, the $943. Figured if I get a couple of dollars out of it, I could go back and be a hero. Does somebody want to make me a hero? Give me a couple. Anyway, never mind. Take that off the records. But certainly, I hope you will consider rescinding the present fine so that we can We can establish, we can start this thing new. There's a new sheriff in town. So we can start with the new sheriff and do this thing the right way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I think we've had a discussion of what we're always here to find when there's a situation like this where a citation's been issued, and we agree that a violation has occurred as it's written in the property management, it's called property management. Maintenance, thank you, ordinance.
Steve,
So,
can I add something?
sir?
Can I add something?
Yes, sir, you may.
In terms of the legal aspects of it, he was originally charged with a nuisance, okay, under the old ordinance. Mm-hmm. And, a nuisance is a very kind of vague word, and it's kind of like what's in the eye of the beholder. And, now he's been charged under the new ordinance that was passed last year, which it falls under, I believe, the property maintenance side. But under the code, a nuisance actually is a term that means it's detrimental to the property of others or tends to cause substantial diminution in the value of other properties in the community. It renders the property dangerous or is detrimental or adverse to the health or welfare of residents in the community, or is generally offensive to the public and having no redeeming social value. The literal height of the grass is a proof issue as to whether it is per se or presumptively considered to be a nuisance, but it's not black and white. I mean, it is, still needs to be deemed to be a nuisance, okay? And that, you have a witness that has complained, and
Can
so that.
Can I clear
that
something
alone.
up real quick? Last year, when we sent the notice of violation, we did not ever issue a citation last year. So this year, the notice of violation and the citation were under the new property maintenance code. Both of them were. So we didn't pull that nuisance piece back into it.
Okay,
We didn't issue any citations last year.
Right. You just had the tall grass warning.
Yes, yes.
What are your gentlemen's thoughts?
Here's my thoughts for what they're worth. Since there's several new players in the game, and we don't have the authority as a board to change an ordinance, the tall grass is the city of LaGrange ordinance. So I would be inclined to recommend that there's clarity among the code enforcement officer, the HOA board, and the complaining neighbor, if there's only one, even if it means walking that lot and saying, this is the lot in question, these are the boundaries in question, whether you put stakes with little pink flags until you kind of get the feel, or your new landscape guy understands that he's doing that area too, has to be less than 12 inches. That's the code that we're charged to enforce. And moving forward, that's the understanding that unfortunately one neighbor has the law on his side. And so as far as I can tell, he wins in this case. But I'd also be inclined to say, because all the confusion and the backlog, can we waive the $100? Let's don't add insult to injury right now. Let's just forget the 100 and let's move forward from here. Clarity, definition of the boundary lines, definition of the ordinance, less than 12 inches, if you need to redefine to a brand-new president, I feel your pain. I'm finding out 3 years later, little pieces of property we own in Falcon Ridge that we have to start cutting now. We've raised our dues twice in the last 2 years. We've explained to the people why. Some like it and pay it, some don't, and put a for sale sign in their yard, and we hate to see them leave, but it's not ours. Black and white actually works in your favor a lot when you just say, here's the reality. We got to have enough dues to take care of stuff, and welcome to the neighborhood, and I hate paying mine too, but I write the check every year. Does that make sense to just clarify the lot? Everybody knows. That way, when the neighbor complains, you go, no, it's this line. We're not going to cut your grass too. It's this line. When he moves and leaves, and the new guy doesn't complain, and it gets a little higher, maybe that's a different question. Because again, Stephanie's not driving around going, aha, they're at it again. It's in violation. Man, I shouldn't go down that road. But I'd be inclined to say, set a time, a date, meet with them, Stephanie, show them and really, literally stake it out until you get the feel for it. Get your new landscaping guy. We've changed landscaping guys, had to teach him where the boundaries are. And just waive the 100 for this,
Right.
And then we'll check in 30 days. The growing season's gonna be done before too long anyway, but,
Ms. McGee, how often do y'all have a homeowners association meeting? Once a month? Once a year.
how about your board? Do you meet more often than that?
We have been meeting
As needed, yeah, that's how we do.
Okay, all right.
just met last week, virtual.
I would like to entertain the idea of what Mike said, to remove the fine, the $100 fine from the notice of violation, and set a date of, now 30 days from today is going to be, I'd like to see something that we could address at our next meeting, which would actually be October the 8th. So it'd be a tad less than 30 days. If we can get that area mowed, bush hogged, whatever you have to do to get that area mowed, and we will revisit that at our next meeting. If it's done by that time, by our next meeting on October the 8th, then, the citation, the $100 would not be required, payment would not be required for that. Mr. Williams mentioned again about the $900, and asking's free, but I recommend that we do not do any sort of a refund of that monies. And so that's my thought on it. I guess we need some sort of if you all are in agreement with it, some sort of a motion for a final order.
I'll make a motion if it stands.
All right, so we have a motion. Make sure that I understand it right, that we will give them until, let's make it October the 7th, 6th, 7th, right in there, for compliance, for the grass to be mowed on the common area of the green space there by the pumping station, whatever that address is. And they'd be mowed down to 12 inches. And if we need any kind of further understanding about where that goes, I'm sure that Stephanie's a phone call away. She can pop up a boundary of that visual that you can see. And as long as it meets her satisfaction, then, she'll bring that back and report back to us next month. So we had the motion on that. I think we're good. We need a second. Mike will second it. And so that judgment will stand, as we mentioned. And you will receive a final order to Do we have that right address I saw on here, Linda Winter at 2030
That is correct.
Highland Court?
She's our treasurer.
Okay, all right, so that's all we have for the new business then. That order stands and we'll move to old business. Thank you, folks.
Thank you all. Thank you, Stephanie.
So on the old business, we have to take a look at, I guess, first one up there was 202 Birch. And Stephanie, do you want to?
Okay, so I'm just giving a status update on 202 Birch. I have some photos here. Yeah, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed, it's all still the same. So there's the front of it. Nothing has changed, you still have the stick sticking out of the roof. She hasn't painted anything more than what's there. I have had the police officers over there once because the door was open. They went through, it was empty, we secured it back up again. Somebody is keeping the grass cut. So that is a positive. But nothing else has changed. She is still in negotiations to try and sell it, but we don't have an end in sight. It could still be 6 months, it could be a year. So that's your status update on Miss Smith.
We gave her until October 8th. Today's a status.
Yes.
Yes,
We gave her to October 8th to have 5 of those nights done.
Yes.
correct.
To avoid, like, $100 per diem.
Mm-hmm,
Correct.
Beginning October 8th, or is that retro?
It was retro.
Okay.
yeah.
Now, is there, do we need to contact her after this meeting?
I can send her,
Just a status update?
I can send her
think
another
it'd be
letter if you'd
courtesy
like.
to say, board met,
yes.
reviewed the status as our agreement.
And I'll do that. I'll send her another letter, just a reminder.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Let her know what October 10th will bring.
Yep.
And if she wants to follow up, she needs to bring someone that can hear. Because that's not a good defense in my opinion.
no,
She can hear just fine.
right, right,
We all know that.
yeah. All right, so that takes care of
90 years
202
old.
Birch. What about 306 East Washington?
306 East Washington, I received an email from Mr. Williams on, I received an email from him on August 20th. No, that's not it. I'm sorry, hold on. I received an email from him. I grabbed the wrong thing here. He had sent an email on the 25th of August requesting a 2-week extension for his roof because the gentleman that was helping him do his roof had cut off a couple toes. So that's all he was asking, was for 14 more days. As it stands today, there's the roof. See, darn it, you've got the pictures in front of you. So the colored picture you have in front of you is going to be easier to see. But as you can see, nothing's been done. Nothing has been done to the roof. It still looks exactly the same as it did 2 months ago. He has done some painting. This picture here, you can see where he has spot painted some items, which is the two-tone color that's going on. And then the other pictures that I included in those packets, you can see the wood. I mean, the wood, there's no new paint has been put on here. This is wood, where the paint has peeled off from before and no new paint has been put on there. And then even up here, at the front of the house, at the roof, this is all exposed wood. There has been no paint put on that. A little squirrel up there too, but. Yeah, the porch roof, he looked like he was working on it. got tar paper or something on it. But even here, you can see where he has not, there's nothing that's been painted. It's still all exactly the same as it was prior. And then, here's a copy of his final order. He was given until August 31st to be in compliance.
So Mr. Williams paid, we received his $100 fine.
He paid the fine, yes, he paid the fine. He is not in compliance.
So we gave him a 14-day extension, so to speak, or he
Just for the
requested
roof.
one.
He requested one just for the roof, not for the painting, just for the roof.
Right, right, okay,
So technically, he has 4 days left on that extension,
okay,
because I did offer him, that if we extended it from the date of the, yes, he has until the 14th to get the roof finished, but that was not an extension for the paint, that was just for the roof.
right, right. So in that matter, we need to, prior to, or, well, within a 4-day time frame, go back, look at it again. If these conditions still exist, then is he issued another citation? Or how does that work, Beach?
You could issue an amended order and an amended fine, but he wouldn't need another, I mean, it's an ongoing citation, correct?
Yes,
I mean,
this-
it
yes.
hasn't been met, so she wouldn't
Yeah.
have to issue a new citation. You would have a follow-up hearing on the number, if you wish to go on a per diem basis, on the number of days that she has actually observed the violation. So that's, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I mean, if there's a new violation, you could issue a new citation, but you just
Right.
get one ticket.
But
for
this is
one thing.
the same violation, it just he hasn't complied with
Correct.
the final order
Correct.
that was written before. So we can contact him and have him come to the next, the October 8th
Okay,
meeting
okay,
and request his presence there, and we'll discuss it again.
Is that necessary if we do a final order that seems pretty clear? That in the way I'm reading the final order says, pay the $100, which he did. Mr. William is ordered to bring the property into compliance on or before August 31st to the satisfaction of the code enforcement officer. And if so, continuing fines and administrative costs will be waived. Otherwise, which is the world we're living in, it's the otherwise world, a per diem of 100 a day till it may be assessed. 100 per diem. That'll get your attention. How many years has he? Okay,
2.5 that I'm aware of, so it's,
I don't want to charge anybody 100 a day, but he's not gonna fix it until we put some teeth to the final order. Doesn't mean we're bad people. It just means there's a code. It's been in violation for years. We slapped your wrist with $100. You paid it. You asked for it'll be 2 weeks before he gets our notification that the board, well, it won't. The board met on September 10th as scheduled, and the decision of the board on the property in question is the final order stands.
I think
only
the way
question is-
I think the way to approach this from what happens in courts all the time when people don't do what they're told to do, is you issue an order, a show cause order, to, that the defendant or the accused shall appear on October 8th, is that the next meeting? And show cause why he is not to be held in contempt or issued greater additional fines pursuant to your previous order.
Okay.
My question to that is, where does it end? How many show causes do you
Well,
get?
October 8th, it should end. I mean, if it's not done by October 8th, then the defendant or the accused has not shown cause why they should not be held, not necessarily in contempt, but subject to further fines, you know.
I thought the word final in final order pretty much
Well,
says
that
that.
final order says you may issue additional fines. You can issue additional fines today, but it says you may issue, but we can't just make it up as it goes along. I mean, we could, because she's gonna, you know, you got 4 days to get his roof fixed, but I think.
Well, I would push back and say it's been way more than 4 days.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
the day we issued the final order on July 9th
Right.
that it's,
What are
you
your
know, it was
thoughts on it,
COVID, then it
Stephen?
was rainy, then now his guy lost a couple fingers, and I hate that for toes or whatever. If we're gonna call it a final order, I think we need to call it needs to be a final order. The only thing I don't see, and maybe I'm just not reading it clear, that last sentence before the signatures, otherwise per diem of 100 per day may be assessed. We don't have an effective date. Is that stated somewhere in that final order or in the previous citation? If I were him, that would be my question, to say, ouch, they're serious. When does my 100 a day start? I don't see that in the final order. Is it the date of the final order? Is it the date of today's review? Or is it the date of compliance on or before August 31st? Is 100 a day backdated to October, or to August 31st?
Well, it's dated from each occurrence. I mean, that she's, after the citation and after the findings of the violation occurred, then she would be required to introduce evidence of personal observation of it on each day, and then say 30 days were observed. Then you all would then have the discretion to issue it for one or every other day, or as many as you want, or just, the maximum that you can be fined is it $100 a day? Is there a minimum?
I thought 100 was the minimum. I thought
No,
it.
I mean,
I thought you
100,
could go.
100 is a citation that I issued, but the code board can change that,
Okay.
like they did today with waiving the $100 citation.
To
Yeah.
me,
Oh, and here's another technique that is used by the county code board, is they, as a incentive, they will issue somebody a rather large fine and say, if it's done by this date, we will waive most of it, okay? That's another method of getting something done.
I like that if it's the first time we've ever heard about somebody, like the case of this Prestwick Estates, that it's just now coming to our attention, even though there's a year's worth of phone calls. And I don't know this guy, so I don't have an axe to grind, but it's 2 more years. And I like that we can say effective August 31st, that's what it said. It's gonna be done on or before August 31st. If it is, we can waive it. If it's not, you face $100 per diem. And to me, it's August 31st that it would start, but we can pick
Do we
another.
do we send him a letter then stating effective September 1st, you're now being fined at $100 a day, show up at the October 8th meeting and discuss with us why you don't feel like you should have to pay $100 a day?
It sounds feasible to myself.
Yeah, you'd have to, put that in a formal motion and write it up into an order. But that's typically the way it's done, is but it's an ongoing, at what point do you stop it? I mean, is it $100? At what point do you send take remedial actions yourself and go in there and paint the house and then charge it
Yeah,
You know, I mean, a lot of people would say, I want to get my house painted for free, you know, and it's not
Well,
painted.
it's,
But-
You know, if he can't get it done himself and he doesn't have the funds to do it, then, you know, he had mentioned selling, you know, if it comes down to it, if he can't do it.
Well, Mr. Williams has said that he has the paint. He couldn't paint it back in February when I first told him to paint it because it was too cold. But he said he has the paint. The conditions just have to be perfect in order to use the paint.
There are no perfect conditions here.
I'm not trying to be a hard nose, but it kind of feels like a waste of my time if every month I come here and we keep kicking cans down the road for people that have been in violation for 2 years. It feels like before this committee was formed, the city's been pretty generous, and there's probably more cases than the 3 that we've heard. This may become a regular thing. To me, the language is really, really clear, and he was here when we issued the final order, and Keith repeated it, and then it got written, and he got a copy, and it says you owe the 100. He got that message because he paid the 100. In addition, it seems pretty clear, Mr. Williams is ordered to bring the property into compliance on or before the 31st. Definition of in compliance is already in there, right? I mean, we already talked about what his violations were. It was painting in the roof
Painting in the roof.
to the satisfaction of the code enforcement officer. That's pretty black and white. And if so, continuing violation fines and administrative costs will be waived. To me, that addresses the fact that we're gonna start charging $100 a day, and we're gonna start at August 31st, and we're gonna remind him, not drop this bomb on him, remind him, here's the document, here's what we said, you didn't come into compliance. You asked for 2 more weeks, you know,
For the roof.
whatever, for the roof, yeah, not to bring it in compliance. Okay, we won't charge you the 100 a day for the roof, but we are for the paint, so we're right back to square one, because it's all one. Otherwise, if you don't, which he hasn't, per diem of 100 a day may be assessed. To me, that's really clear.
So we need that
We
then
can put
in
on the brakes when he says, ouch, it's October 1st.
Right.
Maybe I'll find a painter that can get it done, because they're not falling for there's too much humidity for this paint to stick to the wall anymore. And I'm gonna get in compliance or sell my house. And we're not trying to be a punitive board if we drive by and say, look, the property got a new roof and painted, stop the timer, stop the $100. Oh, by the way, you still owe $2,700 because it took you 27 days to do it. That doesn't make us bad guys, I don't think.
No, but it's a slap in her face and it's a slap in our face that it just, you know, goes on her perpetuity, you know.
You mean if we don't do something?
No, it's a slap that he hasn't done anything.
Oh,
I mean, why issue a citation, or why, you know, it just goes on and on forever. I mean, eventually you have to do something that, you know, that gets his attention.
Well, and eventually, if you have so many fines and you can file the liens on the property, you can get to the point where you file a foreclosure on the property to get your money back. Or yes, we can go out and we can paint it ourselves, send him a bill. If he doesn't pay the bill, then we lien the property.
All right.
And in the end, we're still waiting, but at least we're having some action that's being taken.
Yeah, but a man in his position, you think he would be a little more responsive.
Here's
well, the good news is we don't have to be subjective. It's a really objective
Right.
thing. It's ordinances that we're not deciding whether we're gonna change or amend. We're just, does it exist? Was it violated?
Right.
Pay the,
It was.
fix it or pay it.
Okay.
Well, here's the way we handled it when I was on the county code board. We had this come up so often, and it was so often misunderstood and so often abused, that I wrote the factors for determining the amount of the fine, okay? And there's like a 7-part test, okay? And for phase 1, previous convictions for the fine, for the violation, yes. The citation was contested or uncontested. 3, The ordinance prescribing the penalty for this offense states that upon conviction, and that's the part, it's why this code board is so confusing, is you're a quasi judicial body. Okay, you're sitting as judges in a quasi criminal proceeding. It's not truly criminal, but it's quasi, it's partially criminal. But a person may be fined, so you look at the ordinance and it says, if a person is convicted, see, this code uses the word convicted like criminal law uses, convicted. Okay, whereas in civil law, you're liable. Okay, so it's convicted. So, and it's called, and what you do is called an offense, which is a criminal term. So it's quasi-criminal is what I'm getting at. So it can be, you can be fined, and then some of these fines have ranges on them, okay? But in this one, I think it's just $100 per day, up to the maximum authorized by the ordinance, if there is one. The fourth test is the ordinance prescribing the penalty states that each day that the violation is committed, or each day the violation is permitted to exist, may be considered a separate offense. Does this ordinance say that? I think it does, yes, but you're supposed to make these findings. The officer observed blank number of separate offenses, or the violation was permitted to exist for blank days based on substantial evidence in the record as a whole, which means her testimony that she observed this condition existing on these dates. And then you have to make a finding or a conviction that a blank number of separate offenses occurred. We can't just say, Stephanie, go ahead and fine him for every number of days until the end of time. That the officer observed so many separate offenses or the violation permitted so number of days. And then this is where the board therefore sets the fine at $100 per conviction, and you find how many times he was convicted of separate offenses. So in this case, the board, a couple of years ago, the county board set the fine at $100 per conviction, and the respondent was convicted of 75 separate offenses. So then I gave them the math on how to do that. The amount per conviction times the number of separate offenses equals $7,500 was a total fine then. And then the Christian part of this thing here, where you forgive and try to get it done, says, all or part of this civil fine is waived and held in abeyance, subject to the respondent complying with all the following terms and conditions. And then you give him the terms and conditions that he has to comply with, or else you will issue that fine, or that fine goes in effect immediately. And in this case, we told the person to come up, to clean up the property into compliance within 30 days. For gutters, painting, mowing, all these things. Or the $7,500 would have fine. But if he got it done, it would be held in abeyance. So that got stuff done. People, when they're looking at $10,000 fine or clean it up.
To me, we're at that point. We
Yeah.
issued a final order. We gave him a date. We gave him a $100 per diem from August 31st. It feels like we've done 6 of those 7. I guess there's one more recourse if he wants to take it to, they can take it to the
Well, you take it to district
court
court.
or somebody
Yeah.
if they want.
He paid his fine. I mean, he paid the citation.
Okay.
But you could issue additional fines, but but don't issue an order saying you shall pay them. The order says, here's how much your fine will be, but it will be held in abeyance. You don't have to pay it until you come back here on October 8th, and if it's done, and if it's all done then, you don't have to pay it. But if it isn't done, you could owe this much.
Could or will.
I'm saying the guy that's been
Will.
doing it for 2 years, start the clock. If it's in our authority to enforce $100 a day per the final order, let's do it. And then it's our judgment on a case by case, whether we want to say, thank you for finally getting on that. You know what? I don't know how subjective we can be. You know what? Here's your money back. But not a 2.5 or 3 year guy. If we say you owe us $100 a day, you don't really have to pay it because we may not even make you pay it. Great.
So then,
I'm
to
not gonna paint
move the
my
way
house.
that Mike is talking, and I'm leaning towards that exact statement also. I don't know if you're in there
I'm just saying,
with it
let's
or
just
not,
do what we
Greg,
said
but
we were gonna
do we
do
need
in our
this in
final order?
like a motion to be made to have Stephanie start drawing this letter up to send
Yeah.
to Mr. Williams, or
Final?
with your assistance, or ever how that?
I mean, you could use this format here if you want for, that's, the purpose of this format was to give the code members the ability to formulate a motion.
Is there a document that we need to send that formalizes the final order stated in a different way? Is there a final document? Because I'm inclined to say, Mr. Williams, we met.
Pass that, there's the one
I'll
without
look
the
and see what
scribbles on
what
it.
I need to do, but I think we need to send just a copy of his final order stating this is what you were given until August 31st. The work has not been completed. Here's what's happening now. And then please respond or please appear at the
We could
October
even
meeting.
say, you can have your 14 days. So the 100 a day doesn't start until September 14th, not August 31st. You may have your 14 days. 10 of them are already gone.
Right.
But that's when you ask for them. Effective September 15th, the $100 per diem fine will, I don't know, I can't speak legally, start to accrue, whatever the
Yeah,
right
we'll
way.
I get what he's saying.
Yeah, yeah.
And to me-
Did you actually give him a 14 days?
I did. Yeah, I told him I'd give him 14 days, but that's,
Felt
When did
sorry
he
for the guy
ask?
with no toes.
Well, whatever the calendar date that honors your grace to give him 14 days, that's the calendar date I would think we'd need to use to start the 100 a day.
I had my fingers crossed. I had my hopes up, you know.
Okay.
I always hope.
Well, we're
That's what
not
we'll do
supposed to
then.
be a punitive board. I don't feel like we're being punitive,
No,
but I
our
just feel
goal is
like we're
to
in.
get compliance. That's what our goal is, to get compliance.
Get it fixed.
You live in
Yeah.
this town, there's ordinances, there's rules. Life's not fair sometimes. Everybody doesn't get their own definition of fair.
All right, so we know what Stephanie's going to do there.
Yes.
And any other business? I'll take that to mean we need a motion to adjourn. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Second,
Aye.
meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Could you pass that down to to,
Did you want him to just take a look at it, and then you gave him a blank copy to use as a template?
Yeah, did I give him the blank one?
Yeah, you slid two down. You
Okay.
slid that one first and then a blank one.
Yeah, they're the same one, but they're,
Yeah.
there's those samples.
Oh, you made really good points today.
This board makes me feel like a mean guy, and I'm not a mean guy. I'm just not smart enough to be subjective. I have to live.
What's written. I mean, that simplifies everything for everybody. That's what it is, you know?
Well, it's like a lie. If you tell a lie, you gotta remember what you told.